We've got a really cool media studies panel that we put together this year. Last year was our first annual conference, is our second annual. And the idea here is for our scholars to be able to share what they've been working on and thinking about. Whether it's based in Texas or not, it's really what I'm trying to promote here is that we have people in Texas that are doing media studies work that affect people here in Texas, and then also like go way beyond. A lot of these people here are very worldly in what they study, and then a lot of people here are also doing like work that directly impacts this community in these areas. And so it's a really nice breadth, and a lot of y'all do both. You know, a lot of y'all, depending on where your careers are and what y'all are doing, it's you're breathing between that. A lot of y'all do community work, so really excited about that. We've got Campbell, Dr. Campbell, and he's part of the performance School of Performance Visualization and Fine Arts, and he specifically does music ethnology. Correct? Did I say that right? No. Okay. Let me say that. You can say it right. Tell me how. Ethnomusicology. There we go, Joey. See, I can mess this up. And we've got Will Connor, Dr. Will Connor, who does ethnomusicology as well. There we go, Joey. You can talk sometimes. And he's also in the School of Performance Visualization and Fine Arts. And then we've got Dr. Anthony Ramirez from the University of Houston downtown, and also an alumni of our PhD program. And then we've got Dr. Patrick Sullivan, who is in the School of Performance Visualization and Fine Arts, and that's media studies. And what's that, Phil? So we're really excited to hear about 10 minutes each of y'all's work and what y'all been looking at personally. I think it's really cool to have academics get to talk about like their personal academic passions and how that intersects with their professional work. So I don't know, but that's how I like to look at things. And then we'll have a Q&A. Get to ask some questions. So cool. All right, give them a round of applause. Woo! All right, Campbell, you're up. All right. Works.
All right, so we're all currently sitting in Texas, although I'm not sure where the live stream is streaming to. But I want to introduce you to another ethnomusicologist, far, far away.
Hello, Earthling ethnomusicologist. I am eager to share our culture with you. Press and hold on my face to talk, and let's exchange ideas.
That's a question.
Can it be about anything or?
Who's the next president of the United States?
Who's the next president of the United States?
Ah, my terrestrial friend, I must admit my knowledge extends far beyond the cosmic symphony and the realms of Varexia. I am afraid I do not possess the answer to your question about earthly politics. Let us focus instead on the harmonies of the universe and the melodies that bind us all.
That's not one.
Who is the best band ever?
Based on your in-depth knowledge of human music, what is the best band ever?
Oh, the vast expanse of human music. It is a kaleidoscope of sounds, genres, and emotions. As an ethnomusicologist, I cannot declare a single band as the best. Each band holds its unique timbre, resonating with listeners in different ways. The beauty lies in the diversity and the personal connection each individual finds with the music that captures their soul.
So who are you and why are you contacting us?
Greetings, terrestrial beings. I am Elira Hunaris, a Varexian ethnomusicologist, here to share my knowledge and understanding of the cosmic symphony, Varexian music, and the interconnectedness of all existence. I have contacted you to enlighten and entertain, to weave sonic tales that transcend boundaries and harmonize with the universal melodies. Let us embark on this sonic journey together.
So, let's go. So this project came out of two sort of previous projects, working with new generative AI tools, especially ChatGPT, but also MusicGen and a few others I'll mention in a minute. With the question being, yeah, what can you do with AI all the way down? So for this project, this was coming out of a competition in Sweden. We just finished up January of this year, which was to create a fictitious music culture, and that could be a repertoire, that could be sheet music, that could be a set of sounds and images that I kind of was more inspired by Borges. I decided to create an invented taxonomy, sort of an encyclopedia article on a Disney planet's musical culture. So I worked with a few different AI tools and deployed some of the primary tools of prompt engineering, specifically assigning roles, asking the system to show its work, and also defining different kind of context in order to create this work. So what is Varexia? I don't know. I said, I want to create an alien world. And this is that. And then it gave me something that looked a little bit like Star Trek, and I was a little bored by that. So I kind of pushed back and said, oh, that's a little formulaic. Like that's a little stereotypical. Like how about something a little bit more avant-garde? And that was really all the kind of prompting that I gave. And eventually it created this system of Ferencian musicologists with this taxonomy of what it called sonic fae. So first, I wanted to assign a role to this system, and this is both a key tool in prompt engineering in order to get certain kind of results, but it's also an interesting way to create a situated chatbot. So I had lyric artists describe their role, their style, their pronoun, their physiology to get a system of biography. I even created a system or a set of anecdotes and aphorisms, things that they would say when asked certain kinds of questions and certain kinds of interactions, and I kind of personalized them at humans. As I mentioned, my inspiration was coming from two different short stories from Borges, because I wanted to see what this kind of taxonomy would create on its own. So the most interesting part about this entirely AI-generated system of music were what called sonic fae. And when I asked what instruments they use, like, oh, we don't use instruments. We have a symbiotic relationship with other species from around the galaxy. And we make music with them. Like, oh, okay. Tell me what those are. Like, oh, they're called sonic fae. Oh, all right. And so we did. I created a sort of taxonomy of these systems. Here's a couple of examples. Rumbling sentinels, for instance. And then from these text descriptions, we created these images and sounds. Most soothing of them. More of them are much more irritating, but in pretty interesting way. And that's kind of the purpose, was to create this system of instruments that we could create with larger suites of pieces. But what interested me about this project was how many of you have interacted with a chatbot in the last 2 weeks? Like, probably most of you have, even if you don't know it, if you've been on a telephone call with a speaking with a chatbot. I'm really curious how these systems are going to be deployed by smaller communities and create sort of situated sets of knowledge. So the next iteration of this project is going to be creating an Afrofuturist variety based on submissions from last weekend's Afrofuturist conference to see what expert situated knowledge, what kinds of things will be created, what kinds of gaps, biases, prejudices will systems. It's very difficult to get ChatGPT to create a dystopic system. For instance, it defaults to hope in interesting ways. And part of that's coming from is reinforcement human learning training. After this Afrofuturism conference, the next step is going to be to situate this means of creating mediated spaces, especially around context, to again, like create a partner in academic settings and small community settings. So I'm really curious to know what you all would use a system like this for. What would it be interesting for? And what kind of sounds are you hoping? Thanks.
All right.
You play those other ones off. Just a little bit.
All right, next we got Dr. Connor.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so. Look at microphone, I might sing.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I won't, don't worry. So my talk is that I asked Zeno what he thought would be best for our conference, your conference, his conference. And we settled upon me talking about sync licensing music. And the reason being that some people are unclear as to what that actually is and how to make it. And I'm kind of imparting knowledge that I've gathered from a couple of courses and long-term workshops that have been ongoing for several years, actually. That led me to be able to get some sync licensed music in place. And I thought I'd share the process and what all this actually means. So sync licensing music starts off with who decides what things get heard in a film or TV show. And that is almost always the music supervisor. Now, there are other people sometimes, but in a big production, you have a director or a series of directors who deal with the sound. You'll have somebody who deals with diegetic sound, somebody deals with exegetic sound, somebody that deals with something that's a popular song versus something that is written specifically for the film, etc. And they're the music supervisors. So let's look at the different types of music that they would pick. By types of music, I mean how it's placed in the film or TV show and why it was written. So the first one is perhaps most obvious one, which is an original soundtrack. And that means, just like it sounds, it's somebody who's written a score that is specifically for whatever project is being put together. Then there's needle drop music. And if needle drop music probably is obvious to those of us who listen to records. It's commercial music that has no editing, or it has very, very little editing. They'll take a popular song that's being played on the radio, et cetera, and just plug it into the film. And it could be something that's playing on a radio inside the story, or it could be, you know, something that's happening while somebody's robbing a bank or something like that. But it's popular music typically, and something that has been commercially released, not particularly intended for the film or TV show in which it is being presented. Then we have the synchronized music. So synchronized music is music that's written for film and TV, but not specifically for whatever project is being put together. And somebody, the music supervisor, will come along and say, I like this music, I want to put it into my film. And then you have to get a license to synchronize it with the video, the sync music. And that's what that's what I'm going to focus on here. Because most things, you will have heard sync music over and over and over again, and possibly not even know it. Anytime that you would have watched, say, like a sporting event or something like that, where somebody has a little cutaway, they'll have a stab or a stinger, meaning a short little clip of sound that's written for them, or taken from something else and placed in. That's probably sync music. You would find it even in lots of TV shows that don't have a specific composer for the TV show, but they've taken the music and rearranged it to work with that video. That's the same. So how do they find their music? That's probably obvious, but maybe not. They go to sync libraries. So sync libraries are databases of these types of compositions. They're organized by emotion. Typically, there'll be scary music or happy music or exciting music. And I'm using super vague terms. Most of the libraries are specialized, and most of the libraries have very elaborate descriptions. So it won't just be exciting music. It'll be music that is intended to be played when somebody's running away from somebody with a gun. Something that pinpointed. They're more creative with the way they describe it, but that's the idea. So the qualities of music composition in this style, they're not pieces that are just written to be listened to. They're pieces that are very specifically intended to be used by these music supervisors. And the compositional process is completely different to a pretty major extent from creating a work that is intended to be played in a concert, or even intended to be an original soundtrack. They're not the same thing at all. And let's go through some of the bits and elements that make up a sync music composition, and you'll start to see why they're different. So first of all, they have to be editable. And what I mean by that is there has to be clean distinctions between sections of the song, such that a music supervisor can come in and take parts that they want and rearrange them or remove them or lengthen them, etc. So they have to be highly editable, which actually informs a whole lot about the composition. That's probably the most important part. They have to be exciting to some extent without being invasive. And that doesn't mean that they have to be high energy. They could be very low energy, but they have to catch your attention without distracting you from what's happening in the film. The most music supervisors will not want something that's completely in your face, because they fear it would take away from the action or the story. You know, you're not trying to remove from the narrative, you're trying to support from behind with a composition of this style. you have to have the appropriate genre, and you have to have the appropriate genre throughout the track. So it can't change from reggae to dark ambient. It would, have to be one or the other. And it should stay within whatever it is that you're pitching to the music supervisor. It all has to be unique phrases throughout, meaning you have a theme, but the theme will change with each phrase. And then it has transitions between those phrases. And all of those things have to be one-offs. You don't repeat in a sync licensing piece because the editor does the repeating for you. So you're giving them just the building blocks that they can use to piece something together. And if they want to make a 5-minute piece out of it, they can do it. If they want to make a 10-second piece out of it, they can do it. You give them that tool by making each phrase unique with unique transitions between the phrases. And then it has to be original, like you can't use somebody else's material. I actually, in the course that I was taking with, I was doing a virtual course with a guy named Jesse Josephson. And I was working with a sync licensing composer in Memphis and another one in Hollywood for this class. And one of the other students presented something that had a recognizable element that he had taken from another song, and they immediately smacked him down, like, what are you doing? That's just plagiarism, right? So they knew it. It's just apparently a common thing according to them. You got to be sure that you're using your music and it's never been heard before. So there's a little bit of a formula to this. The track should be 1 to 3 minutes in length. They should have a really strong opening, even if that's a quiet opening. Like it should have low dynamics at the beginning, but it needs to be something that catches your attention, because what's going to happen is the music supervisor is going to listen to it and it's got to catch their attention. So you're actually writing for the music supervisor at this point. There should be some sort of lull or break in the middle to give it a shift in tension. And then it should increase in dynamics throughout. So you're going to have something that's semi-quiet at the beginning, or it could be loud actually at the beginning. That's a lie. It doesn't have to be quiet, but it does have to increase in dynamics. So from the beginning to the end, there should be a notable, steady increase in dynamics. And then the end should also be strong, and it should not fade out. Fading out is something that's not editable, but something with a sharp end to it. They can line up to an action or a quote or something in the film. So they much prefer something that doesn't fade out. If they want it to fade out, they'll figure out a way to make it fade out. I want to play a sample. And I hope you're enjoying all my AI pictures that I did just yesterday. It was fun. So pardon me for a second. I'm going to play one of my sync tracks off my website, because I figured that would just be the easiest thing. This is my terrifying website. But I have sync licensing tracks that I actually play for music supervisors. And this is one that I'm very proud to say won an award, this particular track. So let's have a quick listen. It's a minute and 30 seconds. And hopefully you'll hear the formula that I just went through. The dynamic changes, the break in the middle, the repeatability, the editability. I can't even say that word. Here we go. Little bit crunched there on the speakers, but hopefully you got the idea. So there's all these sync libraries out there, but where do you find them? And then what happens when you find one? There are lists, you can buy lists. There are services that I would strongly recommend avoiding that are things that are general services where people say, upload your song and we'll find you find you a place for your music. But that's not what happens. What happens with those is they get you to upload your songs that already exist, and you hope maybe possibly somebody uses one of your songs for a needle drop placement. But if you're looking for a sync placement, you actually need to have somebody be your agent. What you do is you find a sync licensing library that matches your music or matches the type of films that you want your music, to appear in. And then they go out to bat for you. They say, oh, we've got this composer. Here's 10 or 12 tracks from them. See what you think. We can either use those tracks, or you can, get them to compose something new, get a new series of tracks in the vein that you want, kind of a thing. So they become your agent. And there's a lot more to it than that, but in the interest of time, I will move on. But if you want to ask me about sync licensing, contracts and stuff, that's kind of a really involved, tricky thing. So composers get paid, in general, composers get paid with mechanical rights. That's one of the bigger ones. And that means when something gets played, you get the residual money from the fact that you own the right to have somebody play it. There's also straight up sales. You can just sell a track to a music supervisor. And then there's rolling contracts, and that's the ones where somebody likes one track that you did, and you get it. You get a contract where you make a new track for every film that they do, or something like that. So that's it. That's what I have. I hope you got something out of this discussion of sync.
Great. Next, we have Dr. Anthony Ramirez from the University of Houston downtown.
How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Cool. So yeah, my name is Anthony Ramirez, Dr. Anthony Ramirez. I'm a communication professor at the University of Houston downtown. And today I'm going to be sharing Beyond Borders, exploring Latinx identity in the world of comics and popular culture. Just a little bit about myself is that I'm a national award-winning instructor and mentor. I feel like I'm obligated to say that now. It's weird, but I feel like I'm obligated to say that now. I'm an assistant professor of communication studies. I'm an assistant director of the Center for Latino Studies, and here's the logo for both my university and the Center for Latino Studies. I always have to plug this because it's very important to me. Also, I'm a huge pop culture nerd. So if anybody wants to talk pop culture, I am your dude. I'm also I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I love being from El Paso, and currently I live in Houston, obviously, because I teach in Houston. But also a former podcast host, but the former might be scratched out, and I might become a podcast host again, because at the Center for Latino Studies, we're actually going to start up a new podcast, which I'll be talking about with you all very soon. Sorry to look narcissistic with all my pictures, so. And also just for you, for some of you who don't know who I am too, I also graduated from here too, so yeah. This guy next to me looks familiar though. I don't know if he kind of looks familiar, but. Yeah, oh, you do recognize him then? Okay, cool, cool. I'm glad you recognize him. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's Joey. He helped me during the graduation process, and he's been a huge mentor throughout the whole process, and we still collaborate to this day. Actually, we'll talk about that in a bit. So I want to share some of my research projects with you, but I think, again, I'm narcissistic, so allow me to share more pictures about myself, right? This is when I was less stressed out and way skinnier, okay? Let's start in fall of 2018, okay? Because this is where everything really kind of started to fall into place for me. So my main project is called Historias de la Frontera, which translates to Stories of the Border. And so my first project was in 2018 for a research paper called Identidad Heroica, which means heroic identity, Latinx identity and representation within Blue Beetle and Border Town, which are two comic books that I can go into great detail about. But I'll share some images with you later. So that started in 2017. In 2018, a year later, I then turned that one paper that focused on two comic books into a 5 comic book project that focused on the US-Mexico border and Latinx identity and representation. So again, those were just, it started from 2, then went to 5. Then a few years later for my dissertation project, that expanded even further to 15 comic books and graphic novels. And since then, I'm now working on a book proposal that is focusing on 30 comic books and graphic novels that center around Latinx identity and US-Mexico border representation. So I'm hoping to have that done fairly soon. And I don't want to mention the press name because I don't want people to hate. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'll just give you a clue. Yeah, UT Press. Okay, so with my current project, these are the comic books and graphic novels that I've been able to find. The earliest is from 1941. The last one is in 2024 and it hasn't even released yet. But I know the person, so I might be able to get it in. Yeah, these are, it's an extensive library of comic books, and the majority of them aren't even major publishers. They're not from like DC and Marvel. They're more independent titles that are just really, really interesting books. Some of them I still haven't fully read yet because, again, I had just discovered them in the process of the research process. But just to think, like, this project has taken me a lot of years. But I'm happy to see where it's been going and see how it's been continuing. And it's just really interesting to find the different dynamics within this project. I would totally give a whole presentation on this, but again, I only have 10 minutes. Also, I'm also working on the other projects. One of them is with Wednesday from Netflix. I'm looking at the idea of othering monstrosity and looking at Latinidad within the television show itself. If you don't know what othering means, it means kind of like the marginalization, like being different. What does it mean to be different within the context of the show? Monstrosity is meaning like, it means like using marginalization, but using characters like monsters to showcase like, oh, the differences within our community, or using aliens or other science fiction or horror tropes within that, and they use that term monstrosity. Latinidad just means the logistics of what makes a person Latino. Okay, so I'm doing the co-authored piece with a friend of mine from Syracuse, Rihanna. And so it's been really cool working on that with her, and hopefully we're going to get that published fairly soon. Another project I'm working on with 2 of my favorite people, Joey and Johnny. We're working on a piece called Showing Trajectory, New Media and Communication Classrooms, Centers, and Labs. And that focuses on a project we started during the pandemic that was a YouTube live stream type of show where like panel discussion, and we later turned that into the different like a community building activity, learning about different professions from graduate students to people who are in the professional level, and so on. And now that I'm at University of Houston downtown and my dudes are still here at Texas A&M. Yes, I still say my dudes. And so I don't care if I have a doctor for my time. I'm gonna say my dudes. And so my dudes are still here at Texas A&M, where I'm so happy to collaborate with them and to be able to do some really dope work with them. On top of that, I just thought of this yesterday. It's actually something I've been wanting to work on for a while because one, I'm very passionate about this topic, but I just think it's a badass movie too. It's Blue Beetle. I really want to examine and examine the representation and Latinidad of the film. I might do like an original title that I had for it was called Lopez versus Lopez, the examining Latinidad within El Chicano and Blue Beetle, because both films feature George Lopez and are heavily feature Latino representation or Latinx representation and identity. And so I was thinking of doing that as a project. So stay tuned for that because I haven't really started it yet, but it's an idea that I have. Other projects that I'm working on too, like I mentioned earlier, since I am the assistant director for the Center for Latino Studies there in Houston, downtown, we are trying to look at the lived realities and experiences, not just our professors, but our students as well, because our students' opinion really do matter to us at the Center for Latino Studies. And the makeup and demographic of the University of Houston downtown is 50% or more students being Hispanic or that fall under the Latinx umbrella. And so for us, we think it's really important to showcase and share the stories and experiences of what our students are feeling and dealing with and being. Just what does it mean to be Latinx, Latino, Latina, Latine, whatever term you want to use, right? What does it mean for them? And so we want them to share their stories too, along with the other academic work and all that other cool stuff too. So the first two episodes are actually going to be focusing on the O'Kane Theater. Last semester, I was even a part of it. I was an actor, and that's probably the last time I might act ever, because yeah, that was nuts. If you want to see a picture, I'll show you a picture later. But if you want to see me dressed like a priest, okay. So anyway, Karina knows, that's why she's laughing. The project is really cool because those first two episodes were really cool because we're first talking about like the theoretical aspect of decolonializing Shakespeare. Okay, and what I mean by that is like we're trying, while they're still using Shakespearean language, it's introducing different scenery, different setting, different costumes. It's set in Veracruz, Mexico, and during Dia de los Muertos. And during that play, we even had Dia de los Muertos altar as well. So it was really cool to incorporate a lot of the culture and identity within this play. And so we talk about the theoretical aspect of it. And then in the second episode, we talk about the practice of it and how it comes into play. And then finally, at the Center for Latino Studies, we're trying to build a multimodal studio for students at the center. And what I mean by that is we're trying to create like a space where students can take photos, can record podcasts, can do YouTube videos, and do cool projects that like the Media and Gaming Lab here at Texas A&M does. And I'm sure that the three of you do in your classrooms as well, and with the programs that you work with, especially using AI and the cool stuff y'all are doing. I'm like, wow, I'm blown away by it. But we're trying to do like cool things like that at the smaller university that I work at, because we're not as big as Texas A&M, but we're trying to do cool stuff that our students would be interested in. Because as a professor and as an instructor, one of my first mentalities is student first, and that's one of the things I try to put forth within the center, is thinking how can we help our students and how can we resonate with projects that students are going to want to gravitate towards. And so these are just some of the projects that I have. going on. If you want to have more questions for me, here's my contact information. Here's my email, my website. You can even follow me on Instagram too, shameless plugs. There you go. If you want to follow the University of Houston Downtown Center for Latino Studies, you can follow us at UHD Latino Studies. So it's the @ symbol, UHD Latino Studies, okay? So that's a little bit about me and my research projects and the projects I'm sharing with a lot of cool individuals. Thank you so much for your time, and yeah, can't wait to hear your questions.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Next up, we got Patrick Sullivan, Dr. Patrick Sullivan, presenting about media studies. Do you need an adapter or are you good?
I think I'm fine.
Okay, cool.
Great. Oh.
There you go. Yeah, it's up there.
That's it, something?
Yeah.
Great. Hi, my name is Patrick Sullivan. I'm in the School of Performance Visual and Fine Arts, soon to be a college, sort of renamed it merchandise. And I'm part of this visual material and performance culture section, and also the associate program director for performance studies, where I kind of handle all the film and media studies. In the sake of more presenting research, originally I was going to present on Ren and Stimpy's kind of gross ups, but if anyone wants to talk about that, I'm going to do more of an overview of my research. Right? So my project that I'm kind of coming out of, which is dissertation research, is on television sound. So the network era. What I mean by the network era is really 1952 when they did lifted the station freeze to about 1984. And that's when television shifted from mono sound to multi-channel sound. And this project comes out of a lot of archival research. I was based out of the East Coast, so I was able to go to a lot of East Coast archives in television, but also, I went to USC, UCLA. Television is kind of an interesting thing to hit the archive with. So much of it's lost, and so much of it's live. And really what I'm trying to argue in this project is that television becoming the major medium in the post-war era changed how we listen, right? So like ways of listening. And I do this through kind of addressing philosophical aesthetics. So I'm very much kind of grounded in a German idealist tradition and reworking like how do the different sound effects, noises, laugh track affect how we listen. And this is the general structure of the project. So I've watched way too many Hanna-Barbera cartoons. We remember the good ones, but there's so many that are not good, right? There's just so many. But what's so interesting about them is they would recycle their library of sound effects in these kind of similar patterns. And I really kind of delved into how these sound effects become kind of labor-saving devices, right? So how do sound effects make up for the lack of animation? Really because the animation industry at this time was about to collapse, right? People were being laid off through cinema studios, they were closing their doors, right? And Hanna-Barbera opened and kind of absorbed a lot of that labor, but they had to do it through a different style of animation. They had to do it through limited animation, and that's where that style is kind of born and proliferated. But the sound effects had to step in and really kind of build out the world. And then the next major chapter is Dark Shadows, and there I'm trying to argue that the way in which fans engage with that soap opera, it's kind of along with Star Trek, one of the early fan text, for television. I imagine some people have read Textual Poachers by Henry Jenkins. And it's one of his key ones, right? I think it doesn't have as much legacy as Star Trek, but what's so interesting about it is that it was filmed live to tape. So all its errors are actually kept in the show, right? Like you can see an actor who's actually changed into plain clothes, thinking that they're done filming, like walk across the set. You can like tombstones fall over, vampire bats don't really fly right because it's kind of gothic soap opera, and all the noises are preserved. So and what fans have done is really made those noises matter. They've made these errors matter to their viewing practices, and I say that this is kind of an moment in this kind of like notion of recuperating that media, right? They're quote unquote bad media, right? And there's something going on there with our ability to aesthetically contemplate. Then I actually jumped to a much more popular genre, or much more, maybe not popular, but sitcom has much more of like a cultural, like I see, like I imagine some people in this room like sitcoms in the way in which they don't like soap operas, right? And I like both, but sitcoms are a little bit more, I guess, highbrow, we can say, than a soap opera, but I don't know if that's the kind of level we need. But ultimately, what I argue for is that the laugh track, why people have disliked the laugh track so strongly, is that it actually solicits you to make an aesthetic judgment, and we don't want to make aesthetic judgments in our argument. And then I skipped over the jingle and the announcer's voice because, like, in the structure of the book, these are commercial breaks, right? They're tiny little interstitial chapters that have these a little bit of different argument, more kind of based on how they're just saving labor. And then I go to the formulaic as a conclusion, as the main judgment leveled against network era television. How many people have ever watched a television show called a formulaic, or thought it was formulaic, right? It's a pretty common judgment. But, right, this kind of judgment emerges out of that television drives towards continuous production, right? It's a mass communication medium. So it has to recycle formulas that then get labeled formulaic, right? So it's really kind of about aesthetic temporality and how television has changed the temporality in which we experience media, right? And this is kind of an overview of the objective, right? Network orality attunes television studies to the media and sonic register. It gives readers a rich understanding of the sounds of network era television, right? Because it's actually the first book on television sound. So while television studies has kind of exploded, there's no monograph on television sound from any era. So I'm going to have a draft completed by 24, and it's under kind of advanced contract with Rutgers University Press. And then this kind of brings me to my second project that I'm working on. It really just kind of grew out of really working with visualization and kind of what they're doing there. And really, it's a similar thing, but how have game engines changed how we look, right? If television, I'm arguing, changes how we hear, I'm arguing for unrealism, that a lot of the notions of indexicality, of realism, really need to start to shift once game technologies have become kind of the hegemonic technology of our contemporary moment. And really what I'm trying to do there is reattune visual studies and media studies to this kind of technology. Often camera-based media is still kind of dominant, right? Either television studies or film studies. And obviously cameras are used in virtual production, right? But we're really kind of lifting off of it with the kind of game technology. And this is kind of the research plan. I'm going to the archival. I mean, I think it sounds like really fun archival research, going to the museum play, right? I'll probably play video games, look at archives on like the D&D and other cool stuff. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to start doing some industry interviews, and then I hope to make it to the Silicon Valley. So those are kind of the two major game technology struggles that play in Silicon Valley. So these are kind of the two major projects I'm currently working on. I'm also working on a kind of distant viewing project that we're currently writing a grant proposal with. So if anyone's interested in computer vision and analyzing movement, that's a current project I'm working on. And that's about how can we use computer vision or machine learning to categorize genres based off of movements within the image, right? Can you actually build a notion of genre off of movement? And I always like to end with the email. So thank you. I'm happy to talk about more research.
I would say a yabba dabba do.
Hey, Joey, can you hear me?
All right, we're gonna move this mic over to Campbell. So, we have, we're running about 15 minutes behind, delayed. So, we'll take about 10-15 minutes for Q&A. And, then we'll switch out for our next, panel. But first, let's give them all a round of applause. As the moderator, I have some questions to open up with. But I want to see first, do you all have any questions? What's up,
I got
Dan?
one.
How about Dr. Campbell, like, probably can't explain the whole process, but how you prompted someone to like receive information and interact with people? I think that was the problem.
Sure. So the sort of knowledge base was created using ChatGPT, and then what I did with that is create what's called a system prompt. So that essentially, whenever basically you're creating this situated context. So it's about 50 pages of material that every time I ask a new question of the system, it's given this context. And the context starts with things like after the ChatGPT created this world, I said, okay, you are not ChatGPT. You are Alira Benares. You are an ethnomusicology from this distant planet of Erexia. You should coach all of your responses through this person's voice. You should use the key phrases that you mentioned. Like it's sort of creating a role-playing character essentially. And then I worked with a colleague of mine to run this through 11 labs, so the system can see your face and listen to your question, and that gets transcribed, and then that pings ChatGPT again with that question. So each new question adds to that emerging context. So each new conversation is unique, and it's creating more lore in that system.
It's kind of a feedback loop. I mean, it was for the music anyway. Like, you take what you created, put it back in, and let that create new stuff, and then take that, put it back in. So it's kind of a feedback loop, which was great because that also acts as a filter, right? It acts as a way of scrubbing the humanity out of it.
Cool, anybody else have one? I mean, I got my questions, so. All right, well, what, taking into consideration like y'all's research that y'all are doing, what has made it unique about where you are in terms of the universities you're at and the kind of interest you have in terms of collaborating either with others or with students in terms of what that's kind of been like? And I know that's, you're like, man, that's an obtuse question to ask, but
I do have an answer for that.
okay.
I was like surprised I have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I think what makes it interesting, it like especially like the two dynamics that I'm used to, like being here from A&M, which is PWI. And if you don't know what that means, it's a primarily white institute versus an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institute, and an MSI, Minority Serving Institute. So being at Houston, it's a very different dynamic, especially with the type of research that I do. And seeing my students' reactions towards that, they're like, wow, a person of color is doing research on people of color. That's cool, you know, especially seeing a Latino professor doing research and focusing on identity and representation of Latinos. That's really cool, especially when it comes to popular culture. My students really enjoy the fact that I'm doing research on comic books, on movies, on TV shows, and they're like, oh, then they'll geek out with me about it, and we'll have the conversation, and it starts this whole conversation about like, oh, what did you like about Wednesday, or what did you like about Blue Beetle, or what did you think about this or that, you know? And I just think that's really cool, again, to see that they're relating to it on a deeper level, that it kind of makes me feel at home too. And makes me feel like my research is like, okay, cool, this feels worthy. This feels like something that people are going to enjoy, which I think is neat, because there was a time where I had like a major imposter syndrome, And it was hitting me hard, but now like, I don't know, it just feels nice to see that people are resonating with my work in a different way than I was used to before. I don't know if I'm throwing shade in any way in that way, but I'm not trying to. Yeah.
Part of being a professor is the journey that we take in and of ourselves.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to feel that one?
I can feel that because I didn't actually talk about my research. So, what I work with is, a combination of kind of what everybody else was talking about. I work with, Lovecraftian futurism, and I make musical instruments, and I experiment with composition forms and, try to emulate or evoke narratives, that are based on Lovecraftian horror. And, for me, I think that the uniqueness for where we are comes from the fact that our school, soon to be college, is kind of in this, it's almost in a bubble within the world of STEM. And so when I have STEM students, which is most of my students, come into, say, one of my ensembles or one of my classes that talks about music, I get a completely different perspective because I'm often surrounded by, my colleagues that we're all immersed in our artistic mentalities or our ethnomusicological mentalities, et cetera. And the STEM students aren't at all. And they do the same thing. They come in and they say, oh my gosh, you're working with, racial commentary, or you're working with, some sort of experimentation that I hadn't experienced before because I'm so used to somebody making me regurgitate a formula. And it's not that that's anything bad. It's just a different perspective. And when the light bulb goes on over their heads, that often gives me insight that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I feel like there's a super benefit for everybody involved to have this almost an island between communication and PVFA, working with the STEM students from outside.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So, we've got time for like 2 more questions. So in terms of y'all's research, that y'all been working on, I see a lot of y'all are working on either books or on some kind of collaborative, experiments, and projects. Where do you see academia's measurement of y'all's work going? I feel like we're in a transitionary time. When we take into consideration AI like we did today, and we think about writing and publishing as a measurement of academic work, where do y'all see, scholarship going? And this, like, because I see it totally different in 5 to 10 years. Of course, I thought that in 2010, it hasn't changed, but it's theory, AI will change it. What do y'all think? In terms of at the scholarly level, not at the student level, but at our, at the professor level.
I mean, I think as long as tenure is connected to traditional publishing, you'll see the kind of, continuation of, you need the monograph for associate professor, you need 2 monographs for professor, and a handful of articles. And I kind of ran into this with, I kind of do video essays. So I have a video essay on Hanna-Barbera, and it's like peer reviewed and all this, but it is a video essay, so it doesn't count the same way. So for like this kind of subsect of film and media scholars who work on videographic criticism, it's kind of a both and model, right? Like I'm gonna go try to get that book out by Rutgers, and I'm also gonna produce video essays. So in some sense, it's just, you have to do more, right? I think that's the kind of move, right? It's just that you also have to do, 20 years ago, it was you just did the monograph. Now it's you do monograph and you do a podcast and you do this and you do this. So I don't know when or if that basis in traditional research will shift, or traditional kind of expressions of research will shift, so much as it's kind of more accumulating.
Hey, Joey, can you hear me?
I think those are fantastic points, and I totally agree that it's like a really interesting balance of critical and creative work that are slowly gonna be merging more and more together. That hopefully the academic route starts taking things like video essays and podcasts and more public scholarship that is more towards a creative route in a more serious fashion, because I think with AI adapting so quickly, we need to adapt quickly too as humans that use these tools, but also we got to be more creative with the way we approach things too, because there's like text-based AI too, like that I found out about. There's a website that actually provides the sources, and I'm not gonna mention it because I don't want students to cheat. But there is a website where students can, or people in general, excuse me, not just students, where it's meant for researchers to look up a certain topic or whatever, and then they'll provide like a bibliography for you with actual citations, which I thought was fascinating. And so I was like, oh man, how is this gonna take our job or anything like that? And so it was kind of nerve-wracking in that aspect, but at the same time too, I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe the work that we're talking about has to change too. And hopefully that scholarship, and the higher ups in academia are willing to accept that too, that it's a mix of creative and critical thinking.
Hey, Joey, can you hear me?
Academic want to have a say?
I was gonna say, yeah, I do wonder what the publishing world is gonna look like in 5 years and what the
Hey,
of
quiet.
literature review.
Hush.
Really be,
Starla, lay down.
what kinds of sources are
Hey,
going to be considered relevant
good.
to the ongoing conversation? And I'm
That's your
hoping
neighbor.
to see more
girl.
lab-based projects and creative collaborations becoming a broader focus. And I think that will start happening in conferences like these. And I think that how does one publish this particular talk? And it's going to have to be multimedia, and it's going to have to be the article that comes out on, I can't remember the name of the website, but the TCM website after this point. And as those conversations are archived and created, then that's going to be hopefully a new repository.
Cool. All right. Well, we're at time. Let's give you all one more round of applause. Thank you all so much. This was awesome. You all can get pan dulce, you can get coffee.